Rams house. Welcome into a brand new episode of the Rams Report by Chat Sports. We've talked a lot on this show about the draft, and when we do, we primarily hone in on the first round. Targets at that 13th overall selection, and back when we had it, we used to talk a lot about the 29th overall pick. But today, I want to turn the page to round 2. I want to talk about that 61st overall pick, because while the first round is very important, every round of the draft presents you with an opportunity to come away with some studs that can really help your team. So today we're going to talk about options for the Rams at 61, and let's jump right into this thing with our first player, Jake Golday out of Cincinnati. He is a linebacker, and guys, we were able to steal him in our last mock draft that we did, and it was one of the best picks I've been able to make in a mock draft in a very long time. And what especially gets me excited about this addition is we know the Rams need more presence in the linebacker room, and they're already looking into it. And they're looking into guys like Golday. We know for a fact, R.A. Pole tweeted this out on Twitter just the other day, the Rams were at his pro day. They sent a representative out, which is something that they do in place of 30 visits. They don't usually have players come over to California, but they'll send reps, and occasionally, like they did with the Baton Rouge visit to go see Garrett Nussmeier, they send the whole crew with Snead and Sean McVay also coming out to watch him throw. But this one, just a representative going out to watch Golday, but clear interest in the talent here. And I think he would absolutely match what the Rams have in the linebacker room already, to be completely honest with you. I feel like he's that next Omar Speights to be in a better Omar Speights in a lot of ways, a better upgrade over what we have in the linebacker room. I think the biggest question with Golday is whether or not he fills a need as much as he is already pretty similar to what you have. He's a solid pass rusher, got 3.5 sacks last season at Cincinnati. He can play that outside linebacker role, but I think he would be an inside linebacker for the Rams, which we saw him do for Cincinnati as well. But you see these stats, and you immediately notice coverage is not a big strength for Golday. You saw that in 2025. I'm not going to say he's outright bad in coverage, but it's not a strength for him. It's not an area where he thrives, and that is the biggest weakness of this Rams linebacker unit. I think he can get better as a coverage linebacker, and he's an upgrade over what you have in run defense. How many times did we see Omar Speights miss tackles in the NFC Championship game? How many times was that an issue when we were trying to stop Kenneth Walker, when we were trying to bottle up those plays? But Golday could absolutely upgrade this unit, even if coverage is not his biggest strength. I still think he would be better than a lot of the guys that you've trotted out there at linebacker over the last couple of years. So let me know, how excited would you be for Golday to be a Los Angeles Ram? I want to hear from you guys. Scale it in the comments. Give me your honest thoughts. If you're at 10, you are fired up about this pick. You are jumping out of your seat when you hear it announced. If you're at 1, you are calling Snead to beg him to undo this, beg him to trade Golday for the next pick in the draft. Let me know exactly where you would be feeling about the selection if Golday was the pick at 61. And let's keep rolling on to some other options. We're going to stay with linebacker for a little bit here. Josiah Trotter is another name of interest, in my opinion. He's someone we've talked about a little bit on this channel already, and we'll get to why in just a minute. But if the last name sounds familiar to you, it should. He has an NFL bloodline. He has NFL genes in him. He is the son of Jeremiah Trotter and the younger brother of Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and Jeremiah Trotter both played or play currently for the Philadelphia Eagles. So that is probably where you recognize the last name from. And it absolutely shows in his film. He's only 20 years old right now, and he was the Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year, and he was so refined so early on in his career. He plays with a ton of technical understanding of football. It's just like very evident when you see him move in coverage, when you see the way he diagnoses the run, that he is the son of a former NFL player, that he's someone who spent his childhood in the backyard working with an NFL football player who was trying to develop him. And again, this is somebody that the Rams have met with. The other reason you might have heard this name is if you follow me over on X or Twitter at @JDurham_FBall. We were tweeting out all of the NFL Combine news around the Los Angeles Rams. And one of the biggest pieces that our indie team sent back to us around the Rams was that Josiah Trotter had a meeting with this team. We were able to confirm that news independently, been cited all over on that one sense, which, hey, if you wanted to hear that news before it got cited in Sports Illustrated, before it got cited all over the place as the Rams meeting with Josiah Trotter, go drop a follow on X because we are always tweeting about the Rams, whether it's Rams news or just other Rams content. Make sure you don't miss a thing. And Trotter would, again, be an upgrade for this linebacker unit. He's an even better run defender than Golday is, doesn't offer you as much as a pass rusher, and I feel like that's where he could really work to refine his game. And similar to Golday, he is not the best coverage linebacker in this entire class. This is a class that is overall, I would say, weaker on the coverage linebacker perspective, which is kind of an for us because that's really what we're looking for. But you go back with him and you have two really, really great years of solid production. 18 tackles for loss in his last two seasons. And again, he's incredibly young. He was a freshman in 2024, or redshirt freshman in 2024, redshirt sophomore this last year at Mizzou before declaring for the draft. So a lot of development runway ahead of him to get better as a coverage linebacker, but he isn't there yet. I feel like Golday, you'd probably have to kind of hide or disguise him in coverage early on. But again, somebody who offers you a ton as a run defender. Let's move on to the third option at linebacker of our four options in the second round that I think the Rams should really be investigating. And a lot of these guys we already know they are investigating. Kyle Lewis out of Pittsburgh. He's a comment favorite. I think every time we've talked about linebackers, I get at least one comment asking about Kyle Lewis, and it's absolutely warranted. He's been going pretty viral from his pro day, and I think what you see right away when this guy moves, he almost moves like a corner. You know what I mean? He has the movement skill set and kind of the size as well, right? At 6'1", 220 of a big jumbo-sized nickel corner or of a larger safety or like a box-style safety, like a Nicky Manwari almost, like what you saw Seattle get last year. But Kyle Lewis, he was a linebacker at Pitt at the end of the day. And his coverage skill set is by far the best of the guys that we've talked about. But is it good enough to play those roles that we just talked about? I think that's kind of the question for him at the end of the day. And if he isn't good enough in coverage to do that, is he big enough to play linebacker? I think while you may struggle with the exact fit for Kyle Lewis at the next level, in the second round, he is so much of an impact maker. And when you do have the need, again, that we have at inside linebacker, this is just a group that needs upgrades. And I think it's a position that increasingly the Rams are showing a little bit more attention and value towards, right? Obviously, Landman gets a big extension over the last couple of months. That's unusual for the Rams. This is a team that traded Ernest Jones, who goes on to have a ton of success, for pennies on the dollar because they did not want to pay him. I think they kind of learned their lesson there, right? They're valuing this position a little bit more. And immediately when we pull these coverage stats, you could tell he was the best in coverage of all of the guys that we've talked about so far. 5 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, did allow 3 touchdowns, but the lowest QB rating and on the lowest efficiency rating in terms of targets as far as coverage goes for Kyle Lewis. And a lot of that is just his ability to move a little bit better and his ability to cover a wider variety. It's also why he saw a lot more targets, but he's not without his skill set in run defense as well, nor is he afraid to tackle. 81 tackles in 2025, 8.5 of those for loss. He did also have 3 sacks to go along with those 5 PBUs and 2 interceptions. So Lewis, in a lot of ways, I think could be one of the best fits for the Rams in terms of what you need as far as coverage linebackers go. I think the other question with him is he going to be there? Like Golday, he would be a steal, in my opinion, at 61. You'd be a little lucky to still have him on the board there. But I think all three of those linebackers would be upgrades for this linebacker room. And linebacker is absolutely a need for this team, as is receiver, which we've talked about a lot as a first-round option. But what if the Rams want to go in a different direction on round one? What if they want to address receiver in round two? It's not something we've talked about too much, the possible options in that round. I think if that is going to happen, and I consider this a low probability outcome, but still an outcome nonetheless for the Rams that is possible on draft day. If the board doesn't fall the way they want at 13 in terms of receivers, you could go back into the second round and find yourself a Chris Bell. If he's there for you at 61 and you didn't take a receiver at 13, he would be incredibly intriguing. I think a lot of his skill set matches what you kind of wanted if you were interested in Rashid Shaheed. If you were a Rams fan that was pushing for Rashid Shaheed at the trade deadline, or that was pushing for Rashid Shaheed in free agency before Seattle extended him, you should get excited about the idea of Chris Bell. Pretty similar skill sets, and I think he's an even more, to a degree, he's a souped-up Rashid Shaheed, at least as a receiver. He's not quite that level of fast, but I think he offers you return game upside because he does have that kind of speed, and he's definitely a significant upgrade over your current receiver 3. Which brings me to another point here that I wanted to make. Jordan Whittington. I know that there is a lot of love in the Rams fan base for him, and a number of people that don't consider receiver 3 a need because Jordan Whittington is on the roster. But I can't get there. And I don't think the Rams can either, when this is what you got from Whittington last year. It's not that I don't like Jay Witt. I think he can have a role on this team as a receiver 4, as a really solid depth option if injuries come up, like he was in his rookie year. But last year, we didn't see consistency from him. 7 games where he did not catch a pass in 2025. That's not someone you can rely on. Chris Bell is. At Louisville, we saw that production. 72 receptions on 106 targets, 917 yards for him, and just 3 drops on those 106 targets. He's not a receiver 1. This is why he's fallen into round 2. But at the end of the day, you don't necessarily need a receiver 1 right now. You've got the option to add a luxury receiver 1 caliber player at 13. But I think this offense could succeed. And, I mean, hell, we were number 1 last season. It could still thrive with Chris Bell as that third option. Question at that point becomes, what do you do in round 1 if you aren't drafting a wide receiver? And I think that ultimately just depends on how the board falls. But I've got a different question for you right now. Which of the 4 options that we talked about today would you want to draft? I want you to sound off in the comments for me. Give me a JG for Jake Golday. Give me a KL for Kyle Lewis, a JT for Josiah Trotter, or a CB for Chris Bell. Let me know in the comments with these guys' initials, which one would you want to see the Rams come away with at 61st overall in the second round of the 2026 NFL Draft. And speaking of the draft, we're going to have a 7-round mock draft coming out on Friday. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and make sure you are locked in because you don't want to miss a thing.